I'm Susan Kennedy of Pretty Peaceful Crochet, and I am here this morning out in my backyard in the southwest corner of Colorado to tell you a little bit more about the Cactus Garden blanket, how it's made, and give you a little bit of information about yarn and maybe a little color inspiration for your own blanket. So the Cactus Garden blanket is crocheted in two colors. We have a yarn A, that is what makes the raised diamond pattern on the blanket. And I'm using a self-striping yarn for yarn A, Lion Brand Mandala. These are the two colors of mandala I've used in this blanket. Gnome, which is kind of a rainbow color, and peacock. If you want to make this exact blanket and you can't find peacock, there's another colorway of mandala baby called Mermaid Cove that is a very close match to this one. The blanket also uses a yarn B or background color of yarn, and this is what I used black in my blanket. Caron Simply Soft Black is my yarn B here. When you're choosing a yarn A and yarn B, try to choose yarns that both recommend the same hook size on the label. For example, mandala yarn and the Caron Simply Soft yarn both on the yarn label say to use a 5mm hook. So that's what I've based the dimensions on, are these yarns in a 5mm hook. But you can use any yarn you like. You can just use the hook size that is recommended on the yarn label, but also be aware that your dimensions may be a little bit different than what I have listed in the pattern. For example, if you're using a DK weight yarn like Stylecraft DK, and you want to go down to a 4mm hook, your blanket will be a few inches smaller, lengthwise and widthwise. And as far as which yarn you use for yarn A and yarn B, yarn A is what's going to create your diamond pattern, yarn B is the background. Here's an example. This is my Cactus Garden baby blanket where I've switched it up a little bit. I used Lion Brand Mandala in Liger as my yarn B background yarn. And this is Bernat Baby Sport in Lavender, quite a messy ball of it, for my yarn A. So this ball started out to be big like this, and this is about how much I've used to make the baby blanket here. The baby blanket only requires one cake, and not even one full cake. For example, in Liger, I cut out the white. So if you have only one cake and you want to make a Cactus Garden, download the Cactus Garden baby blanket pattern from Ravelry, and you can get started on that. It's a very quick make. I think mine took about 4 days. If you're a fast crocheter, you could probably do it in a weekend. And it also has this fringe option, which I will share with you for the large cactus blanket crochet-a-long as well. So, how much yarn will you need? The large blanket requires 6 balls of mandala, 6 cakes of mandala. You can find the yarn requirements. There's a photo of them on Ravelry, and also a photo in our Facebook group for the crochet-along called Pretty Peaceful People. If you're not in the group, please join us. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll share, we can ask each other questions and just generally help each other out and support. And I love to throw a love on a beautiful blanket. I love to see beautiful blankets. So please join our group and share. So it takes 6 cakes of mandala if you use all of the colors within the cake and if you let the colors flow, which means that you may have a color change in the middle of the row. For this blanket, I did let the colors flow here between the yellows and oranges to pinks, but I did cut some of the harsher transitions out, like between the lavender and the blue here. So I started with 9 cakes, and I did cut out the dull green and the light purple colors of the gnome here, just because I really wanted it bright and vibrant. So if you want to make this exact blanket, plan to get 9 cakes, 6 cakes of gnome, 3 cakes of peacock, and you will have quite a bit left over. Let me show you. I started with 9 cakes. This is how much gnome I had left over, quite a bit, all the dull green and then a few scraps that weren't long enough for a row. And this is how much peacock I had left over. So I had 2 full cakes of gnome left over and quite a bit of peacock, just because I wanted my blanket to be symmetrical, a mirror image, and I didn't want harsh color transitions within the row. So, to give you some ideas for what to do with those scraps, don't worry, they will not go to waste. Here's a fun little project you can find on my Ravelry page. It's a free pattern on I Like Crochet magazine called Spice of Life Serape Clutch. Spice of Life Striped Clutch. And these are super fun. It's all mandala yarn, great for scraps. I use this to carry my jewelry when I travel. And just a fun little tassel and a little key fob. Super cute. Very small hook, it makes it tight so you don't have to line it. So that's a fun project. Another one I really like, this is called my Laid Back Scrap Wrap. You can find this pattern on Ravelry, and the fringe on this wrap takes only 18 inches of yarn, which I think is 30 some centimeters. And I just love this one. I wear it a lot in the winter in my office when it's cold. So this is a really fun scrap project for all those gnome scraps. Great gift for someone you know that's always cold. And it's super easy because it's all single crochet with a big hook. So let me give you an idea for some color inspiration that you could use for your blanket. These are the scraps I'm going to use for my next Cactus Garden blanket in the size small. I'm going to use the neutrals as yarn A and these darker colors as yarn B for the diamond pattern. These are scraps of mandala in Centaur and a couple scraps of Chimera colorway, and possibly the green maybe from Warlock. I just dug through my scrap bin and chose some that I thought looked cute. For the large blanket, if you're using mandala yarn, you need 6 grams of mandala yarn per row. For the small blanket, you only need 3 grams of mandala yarn per row, so you can use quite small scraps for this project. Some color combinations. The earthy one I love. The next one after that, which I may do a medium-sized Cactus Garden blanket, I plan to use mandala in Harpy with this hot pink that I just could not resist at the yarn store. This is Karen Simply Soft in neon pink. Chimera, I was digging through my yarn basket. I thought looked really great with this Bernat Baby Sport in baby taupe color. I think that would just make the Chimera really pop. This is mandala yarn in Griffin. And this is Karen Simply Soft and Taupe. I thought it would just be a beautiful earthy blanket, especially if you're making want to make a more masculine blanket with darker colors for someone that prefers darker earthy colors. That would be really pretty. And finally we have, this is a work in progress here. I'll try to get this pattern up soon. It's a simple wrap. I'm calling it the Cozy Yogini wrap, I think. This is Lion Brand Mandala in Centaur and Karen Simply Soft in Gray Heather. So I think that's a really beautiful combination. Just that would go great with my decor inside my house over there because we have kind of a southwestern earthy tones going on. So I'm going to get closer in on my pattern here and tell you a little bit more about how this pattern has worked. Okay, when I was telling you earlier about some fun scrap projects, I forgot to tell you about this pillow that I brought out to show you. This is one of the pillows in the Mountain and Mesa pillow set. The pattern is available on Ravelry. And this is just a really fun way to use those tiny little itty bitty scrap yarns. This is Lion Brand Mandala in Centaur, and everybody loves this. I guess it's a love it or hate it thing, but my kids love it. Everybody loves to pet this pillow. And I also wanted to show you my Southwest rug here. You'll notice it has the same diamond pattern as mandala. It's the same, as the Cactus Garden blanket. It's the same chart. This is a pattern I wrote in 2017. You can find it for free on I Like Crochet magazine's website, ilikecrochet.com. And you can also find the paid detailed kind of photo tutorial PDF on Ravelry. It's got some really fun, funky fringe. And I love this rug. I've used it all over my house. It was in the bathroom for a while. And it currently lives in my son's room. Also, I wanted to show you my little color cards for planning if you're using scraps to make your blanket. This is kind of how I decided the order for my scraps for my small Cactus Garden blanket when I was choosing them from the scrap bin. And this is the little color card I made for my large Cactus Garden blanket. For the large blanket, I used the colors in the order they came off the cakes. Just as the cake was wound, I did not change the order of the gnome cake or the peacock cake Just use them right as they came, with the exception of cutting out that green color. So let's take a look at the pattern. I wish my pattern printer had printed this out in color so you can see my beautiful photo here. But the first page of part 1 will have some yarn recommendations, where you can buy the yarn, some kind of substitutions if you can't get mandala yarn. The second page starts to tell you a little bit about sizes, and you'll see I have a section here about custom sizes. If you don't want to make the small or large, you can make a medium, you can make a queen size or king size, whatever you like. So the small blanket is about 30 inches by 53 inches, 76 centimeters wide, 135 centimeters long. These dimensions are approximate. You'll need 1,180 yards of yarn A, mandala yarn if you're going to kind of copy the one I've done, 844 yards of yarn B, plus another 107 yards for the border. And in the blanket I've used yarn B for the border. So this will be 2 cakes of mandala yarn. If you want your blanket to be a mirror image symmetrical on both sides and not have any color transitions in each row, plan to get 4 cakes. The large blanket dimensions are listed here as well. You'll need, it's about 60 inches wide by 82 inches long, 152 centimeters by 208 centimeters. You'll need 3,540 yards of yarn A. This is 6 cakes of mandala yarn if you're using mandala. And 2,520 yards of yarn B, plus 160 yards for the border. If you're using Caron Simply Soft for your yarn B, 9 skeins can do the yarn B and the border together. So if you are going to use the colors as is, 6 cakes of mandala will be enough, but if you want to make your blanket a mirror image and avoid color changes, plan to get 9 cakes of mandala yarn. If you've worked with this yarn, you know sometimes each mandala is a little bit different. That's why we love it, but it's a good idea to get an extra cake or 2 if you're worried about matching and you want it to look, both sides to look the same. Okay, so I'll show you kind of how this crochet-a-long will go as far as the pattern repeats and the parts of the pattern. So the crochet-a-long has 4 parts. Part 1 of the blanket goes to about here for the small and here for the large. This little box here shows 1 pattern repeat. This is 1 pattern repeat. The repeat is 64 stitches wide, which is about 15 inches. So the small blanket has 2 pattern repeats per row. We're going to repeat this small little chart. And actually the chart is only this little bit here. We also have written directions. So it's 2 repeats per row, and we have 4 repeats per row for the large blanket. So you can make any size blanket you want just by adding more stitches, 64 stitches per pattern repeat. So for example, if you want to make a queen size blanket, you would repeat this 6 repeats per row. And I'll try to put in the starting chain number for that in the pattern. Part 2 of the pattern is the center section. That will go to about here and about here over here. And this is kind of a mirror image. So we're repeating part 2 twice for the large blanket, twice for the small blanket. And then we have part 3, which is going to be the same as part 1. Part 4 is the border. So part 1, part 2, part 3, part 1, part 2, part 3. And then part 4 will be the border. I plan to release each part every 2 weeks, so September 1st, September 14th will be part 2, September 28th will be part 3. Yeah, I think so. So if you're making the small blanket, you might feel like our pace is a little slow, or if you're a fast crocheter. If you're making the large blanket, you may feel like our pace is a little too fast, but I'm just trying to make everybody happy with breaking it into 4 parts every 2 weeks. The large blanket took me 1 month and 2 days to make. I'm not a particularly fast crocheter, but I was pretty motivated to finish it because of the crochet-a-long and to get my photography done. So, about the custom sizes, I printed out a few different ways you can make this pattern your own. These are 3 different options for making a medium-sized Cactus Garden blanket. that is 45 inches wide. And all three of these options have 3 pattern repeats per row. So instead of 2 for the small or 4 for the large, you could do 3. And these 3 look different depending on how many times you want to repeat parts 1, parts 2, and part 3. Here I've repeated part 1 twice, and the center section part 2 only once. Here I've repeated part 1 once, part 2 twice. And then here it's 2 repeats of part 1 and part 2 and part 3. So you can really use this to make the pattern your own, depending on whether you kind of like this center section that I think it looks like a cactus, or whether you like the diamonds on the end better. You can really make it your own. So many ways you can make this, and I can't wait to see all of your beautiful creations. So please, if you're sharing your blankets on social media, use hashtag Cactus Garden Blankets so we can find each other's blankets. And if you want to, please join our Facebook group, Pretty Peaceful People. You can find it from the Pretty Peaceful Facebook page. And I just want to quickly show you the rest of the pattern. You'll see in part 1, there's some pattern notes about how this has worked. Each row is only 1 color of yarn. We're not carrying colors. It's just you're starting at the right edge and working to the left and fastening off if you're right-handed, or the other way around if you're left-handed. So you got some photos here of how to start and end each row. I got a little tutorial on mosaic crochet, and this will be in color on your pattern. Mine's only black and white here because of my printer. A little information about how to read a chart if you want to work from the charts. Here's our part 1 chart you'll get a sneak peek at, and then we also have written directions for each row if you prefer to follow written directions. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the part 1 tutorial video. Thank you.